I think my mindset has been kind of traditional. It's been to drive an electric car as little as possible because it could be a fragile beast and the batteries won't last long. I think I was dead wrong about this. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. This channel is dedicated to finding out whether I really do know it all or not. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more of these, and definitely make sure you ask me questions in the comments or at my email address. So lately I've been reconsidering things. I think because I'm kind of an older person and I was around when the GM EV1 was around, kind of a toy car. It was a big deal at the time, but it was really never destined to be anything much more than a marketing ploy. So in my mind, I've had this idea that we should baby electric cars. They should be the cars that you get it and it's your city car and you drive it a little bit sometimes, but you certainly don't take it on long trips. You certainly don't take it into harsh environments. You don't drive it ridiculous numbers of miles. And I think I'm just kind of wrong about all of that. So here I'm going to explain why I think so. First of all, I think that battery degradation is the thing that everybody still thinks about, right? That's something that even my iPhone, right? Whatever, it's after 2 years, the battery is half of what it used to be. So you really, really notice that battery degradation. And I think that causes a lot of people fear for electric cars. It's okay, so you have, let's say 280 miles of range when you first start out, but after 2 or 3 years of hard driving, well, you'll be down to 150 miles or something. That's scary. But as far as the evidence is concerned, that is really not the case. And if, a million-mile battery kind of technology comes through within the next couple of years, it might really not be the case. Batteries might be extremely stable over long periods of charging and recharging. So that kind of thing would really, really change the basic complaint and concern about electric cars. So, of course, if Tesla's battery day goes as expected, we're going to definitely hear about longer range batteries, but we also probably will hear about the million-mile battery, the fabled million-mile battery, which just basically means it can do a whole bunch more charge and discharge cycles before the degradation goes below, let's say, 80% or something. So, reasonably speaking, that would mean that after 200,000 or 300,000 miles, the battery is still going to be at 90% of what it was originally, which is pretty impressive. If that's the case, then everything gets turned on its head. So what we should do instead is we should drive our ICE cars very gently and carefully, and we should drive our electric cars incredibly hard, and we should put the miles on them, and we should take them into adverse conditions and dusty stuff and dirty stuff and off-roading stuff, and we should really take good care of our ICE cars instead. So what specifically do I mean by driving the hardest? What I mean is more miles, of course, obviously, but also potentially in nastier, dirtier conditions. Very cold conditions might be the one thing that an ICE car is still going to be best at. So if you live in northern Alaska or something, or Siberia, then yeah, I think for the time being, ICE cars, internal combustion engine cars, are going to be better for that kind of condition, even though it's still really, really rough on them. Cold is just hard on everything, basically. So what we should do is we should put all of our commute miles on our electric cars, right? Nearly all the long road trips, unless for some reason it's super crucial that you be able to stop for less than 5 minutes to fill up a gas tank and keep going. But under normal circumstances, a 1,000-kilometer or 600-mile road trip, it makes a lot of sense that you would want to stop every couple of hours and, eat something and take a bathroom break, etc., etc. So all of that means that it's pretty reasonable to be able to charge up your car at the same time, and why not drive an electric car in that case? It certainly means that any ride-hailing service and the eventual robo-taxi where you don't even have to be in the car, those make really, really good sense for electric cars once the battery degradation issue is not a thing. I would also say off-road trips, even though I've had a lot of criticism. I did an episode here about a comparison between the Bronco and the Jeep Wrangler and the Tacoma and the eventual Cybertruck. And people complained about the fact that trucks are really not off-road vehicles, but for now, let's just say the Cybertruck is an off-road vehicle. Maybe eventually they'll release something like a Jeep, right? A little bit more of that form factor. In any case, a battery-operated car is better in those conditions. It doesn't have to mess with the dustiness because it's not an air-breathing engine. It doesn't have to deal with the fact that it's got really, really crappy, like high temperature, cold temperature conditions. It's going to be able to handle that stuff better than an ICE engine will be able to. Now, the body of the truck, maybe not, right? I can admit that the form factor might not be ideal for off-roading at this point. But the fact of an electric motor versus an air-breathing internal combustion engine, there's no doubt that a sealed electric motor and sealed batteries are definitely going to deal better with these nasty conditions. So why is this? Well, the first one we touched on already, which is the new battery technology is allowing for, and hopefully will very soon greatly allow for, very long driving range without significant degradation. That's number one. Number two that people don't talk about as much is that electric engines are way, way, way simpler than internal combustion engines. As opposed to thousands of parts and exploding things and pressure changes and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that Tesla's motors are not incredibly cool technology, but it's just got way fewer moving parts. It just runs on electricity, right? If you think about it, like how long have you had your refrigerator or your vacuum cleaner or something like that? Those kinds of motors, even though the inexpensive ones, they just go forever. So you really don't have to worry about them nearly as much. Internal combustion engines, like, oh gosh, I have a riding mower that I detest. It's the last internal combustion yard maintenance thing, right? My hand mower is battery operated, my leaf blower, my hedge trimmers, etc., etc. But that thing, my riding mower, just requires so much babying, and every winter it gets really cranky about the fact that it's sat outside for a long time in the cold with not being turned over and driven around. An electric car, if you take the battery out and stick it in the garage so the battery's kept at a reasonable temperature during the winter, it could sit for months, and you just pop the battery in and it just starts up, right? So that's a huge advantage that electric motors have over internal combustion engine motors. So along those lines, there's very little maintenance. Electric motors don't have to have oil changes. They don't have to have fluid changes. They don't have to have timing belt, spark plug, etc. changes. There's a lot less wear on the brakes in something like a Tesla because it's using regenerative braking, so you're not stamping on the brakes all the time. So you're not going to wear out your brakes as fast. The only thing that's really comparable is that you're going to have to replace the tires approximately as often as you would in an ICE car. But everything else, the maintenance is way less on an electric car. And if you consider the Cybertruck, even the paint and body issues, those are no longer a thing, right? It's kind of impervious. It doesn't really have paint. You don't have to worry about scratches on a stainless steel body, so it's going to be really pretty impervious. You could drive one that's 5 or 6 years old that might look just about as good as a new one, and that's pretty impressive. That doesn't happen with old cars with paint on them for sure. And finally, as I said before, without having air breathing, the car is much less impacted by dirt. So off-road, dirt roads, etc., like farm roads, things like that, it's not impacted by them the same way that an air-breathing, right? Because you're sucking air in, it gets filtered, but then it goes into these pistons and it gets exploded. And so any kind of grit or any nastiness that gets in is just degrading the engine along with everything else that's going on. So an electric motor and batteries have it way over ICE motors in that sense. So what we should do is we should drive our electric cars as hard as possible, and we should baby our leftover ICE cars until we don't have those anymore. The one thing I would say is if you're going to do this, don't lease the car because you will regret that. You need to purchase the car if you're going to drive it hard. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, definitely make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more of them. And definitely ask me questions in the comments or at my email address, which is DrKnowItAllKnowsTech@gmail.com. Till next time. Bye-bye.